Now, for many developing countries, self-sufficiency and business ownership is oftentimes a means to an end, an opportunity to be employed and make some money. But experts say governments need to invest more resources and training in entrepreneurs so that businesses in these developing countries can really create economic growth, drive innovation, competition, and in turn, alleviate poverty. Now, to talk more about entrepreneurship and startups, I caught up with one man who is no stranger to running successful businesses. Mark Cuban is a billionaire investor, a businessman, a film producer and author, a TV personality, and the owner of the NBA's Dallas Mavericks. I sat down with him earlier and I started by asking Cuban to talk about the growth opportunity for startups in emerging economies.
In developing countries, I think because technology is really just taking hold and starting to evolve, that creates a lot of opportunity. So maybe you can't grow quite as quickly, or maybe you can't grow quite as big as you may in the United States or some other developed nation, but because it's all brand new, wherever there's change, there's opportunity, and that opportunity, I think, is really just starting to take hold.
You get pitched all the time.
Every minute of every day.
What are some of the big things that you look for when someone is pitching their idea to you?
I want someone who is excited, and I don't want to use the word passionate because passionate's overused. We're all passionate about something. You know, I was passionate about learning to play the guitar, passionate about this, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. And what I try to look at is, where does someone spend their time? You know, are they so committed to it that when you start, learning or start trying something, you look up and it's been 10 hours.
Say you get presented with a great idea and you see that this has the potential to make millions of dollars. What's the one thing that would immediately turn you off and say, nope, not putting my money there?
When someone just says it's automatic, right? Oh, this is $1 billion deal. I know it for sure. Well, if you know it, do it. All right. I don't want to hear about what you know. I want to know about what you're doing. Because we all have great ideas. There's not a person on the face of the planet that hasn't had an idea of some sort and gotten some sort of consensus among their friends or peers saying, oh, it's a great idea, you ought to do it. And then they stop. You know, for most entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, there's a little line that's right in front of them, and 99% of people are afraid to step over those lines. And so there's entrepreneurs and there's wantrepreneurs. And, you've got to be able to tell the difference.
What would you prefer? User acquisition as a growth strategy or revenue?
Revenue every time. Because, by definition, if you have revenue, you've already acquired the users. And so while I understand I have I have an app, Cyberdust, and so it's a privacy app, and I use it to communicate with people, And so we're more worried about user acquisition right now because, unless you have the users, you're going to be limited in your revenue. Every other company, money talks, everything else walks, right? Because if I can't convince somebody, or if I'm not providing enough value to customers, they're telling me by lack of revenue. And so, I'm not a fan of companies that raise more money than they're able to generate in revenue. I think it's got to be the other way around.
So there's a lot of speculation that companies like Airbnb and Uber, really considered, I guess, the tech darlings of today. There's a lot of speculation that these companies could go public. Do you think that they should file for an IPO, or do you think, hey, you've got millions and millions of dollars coming in, round after round of VC financing, investors all over the world, and you get to keep your financials private, why go public? Where do you stand on that?
They should have gone public a long time ago.
Really?
Yeah. First of all, Uber is the one deal I missed, right? I had Travis, the CEO and the founder, I had financed his previous company, Red Swoosh, and I was the first guy he came to for Uber, and it was Uber Cab, and I was like, this is a great idea, but da-da-da-da-da, and then he found someone to give him obscene money, so, he's already smarter than me. But that said, the problem right now with IPOs and tech companies that are already big, like we saw that with Box, where I was an early investor. We're seeing it now with Uber and Airbnb and others, Slack, where they go through these hyper-growth stages, which the VCs love, and they just throw money at them. But by the time they've been around 10 years and it's time to go public, that Uber growth, that special growth is already gone. And so what's happening is these companies, by the time they try to go public, the big time growth isn't there for the public investors, and their stocks take a hit. You know, Facebook is a perfect example. They went public and the stock went straight down because their growth had slowed, and had they not figured out mobile the way they had, it would have been a disaster. They were fortunate and they kind of pivoted a little bit from web to mobile, and it worked out great. But for most companies, it's not like that. If I have a choice between investing in a public company or a private company, one has liquidity, the other one doesn't. I want to invest in the public company every time. I think there's going to be a lot of changes than what we see, but it's a great question, and I think they waited too long. I think Uber should have gone public earlier. I think Airbnb should already be public as well. Any company that, you know, $100 million plus in revenue and is more than doubling every year, you should already be public.
Mark, do you think we're seeing a trend in Silicon Valley where a lot of these late-stage private companies, or unicorns rather, are clocking in those billion-dollar plus valuations?
Yeah, I mean, you know, is it a bubble, I guess what you're asking? Yes. And the reality is, as an investor, if you're investing in a startup, in a unicorn, and really the prospects of going public right now aren't there, you might as well write down your investment to zero. That's the definition of a bubble, where there's no liquidity and there's no place to sell your stock. So it's a real problem, and I think that's got to change.